my God, that's...
At least a carat and a half.
Look at this.
Princess cut, flawless clarity.
Oh my God, I can't believe he was actually going to propose this time.
So I didn't.
So I think since it was the first time that I was directing on the mothership, as we lovingly call it, I think I was just overall excited. It almost didn't matter what came my way in terms of storyline. I just wanted to be a part of it and get to work with the crew on NCIS and the cast of NCIS. You know, I've only ever worked with them, obviously, as an actor. And so we go way back, 14, 15 years at this point. Our characters were introduced on that show. And I was received with the biggest open arms. It was like a super wonderful, warm hug from those guys. So yeah, I was obviously coming from an acting background. I'm doing my best to understand the technical side and what the best way to tell a story is aesthetically, using the camera without also making it obvious that I'm using the camera in a specific way. And that's the trick of it. It's like you want to direct in a cool way, but you also don't want to see the directing. Otherwise, you're not really doing your job as a director. But honestly, I just love working with actors. I love exploring the scenes and just bringing different things out of it and figuring out what the scene could be. And yeah, I think that's kind of where my main focus maybe was. Yeah. Yeah, I think at that moment I was just like, oh my God, I'm working with Sean Murray and he's standing a foot away from me because we're in an elevator and he's so, he was so wonderful and so, welcoming. Like he's been the new guy before, right? So I think anybody who's worn those shoes knows what it feels like. But standing so close to Sean, and it was I think all of it at the time was just so exciting. All I could think about was like, just play the character, don't screw up your lines. You're putting so much pressure on yourself, and then you're placed in an elevator with two people who've been on their show for so long, and you're just hoping that you in some way impress them or don't disappoint them. And there's so much stuff going through your mind. And now I look back and I'm like, they were just rooting for us. Like they weren't judging us or anything like that. They were just like, here's a kid who's doing her best, So anyway, yeah, Sean and I get along super, super well. We had, time to hang out on set this time around. And now we're just like two people who've been on the show for a long time, both parents, It's like your conversations change and your priorities change. And yeah, he was extraordinarily supportive both times. So first of all, it was on the page, and that is a huge advantage for any actor or director. Like if you have good jokes or a good sort of like comedic through line in an episode, that's got to be on the page. And Yasmin Yilmaz, who wrote the episode, did a really, really good job about that. And then, Wilmer is a funny guy. He brings the comedic timing. So, it's just, my job's just capture it. Really, and maybe I throw in a possible improv, or maybe I throw in a suggestion, but the baseline is obviously there, you know what I mean? And then obviously editing is a big part of comedy too. You've got to make sure that you keep up with the actor's comedic timing and not screw it up in editing by, cutting away a beat too fast or a beat too slow, or, So it's definitely a teamwork when it comes to comedy, but Wilmer's a really funny guy. And then also comedy is also played in everybody else's reactions, right? So you want to make sure that you cut to everybody else and get their reactions, because they're also helping the audience understand how they're supposed to react to something, right? If a character is offended, they're like, oh, maybe that wasn't that funny. But if they're in on it, then it's okay to laugh at it. So, and then just make sure you're sort of wide enough to capture physical humor. At some point, Wilmer throws the fries in the garbage can, and he kind of did this really big movement. If I'm in a close-up, you won't catch that. So that's what I mean by like, just, as a director, just follow what they're doing, just capture it. Gary had been on our show for crossovers, so I had a brief encounter with him, never together in any scenes, but I made sure to go and introduce myself when he was working with us. Katrina, I met for the first time this episode in person, I believe, or at least it only been in passing before. Sean and we go back a few years. And Wilmer and I never worked together, but we do go back a few years just because of CBS events and everything. And we've been to a Comic-Con together. So we definitely had many interactions, maybe more on a PR side. But I have photos with him when I was pregnant with my daughter from some Comic-Con that we did together. So we're always really, really happy to see each other. And then Brian Dietzen as well. I go way back with him because of NCIS. And, you know, he and I text back and forth once in a while because I jumped into directing and he obviously writes on the show. And so we're, you know, we have a little camaraderie thing going on there from having sidestepped our primary careers. Well, let's just say that off camera, we frequently laughed at the clown package. It was such a funny, absurd thing to add, absurd in a good way, to add to the storyline. And I'm a really big fan of taking the audience in one direction and then going and flipping it on them. And that's exactly what we did. So we really tried to tee it up. They screech in their cars and they run into this warehouse and the lights are weird and the music's loud. So we really tried hard to throw off the audience by thinking this is some crazy place. And then you open the door and there's this guy chained and duct taped to the wall, which is what is happening. And he's like, put the hood back on, you know? You're the wrong guys. You're not even dressed right. And it's like, what? So that was a fun, crazy thing to play with. And also when they introduced that into the scripts, you know, it's a location that isn't your normal location for an episode. And so you really get to have fun with that and get a little bit adventurous and play off of that comedy and the characters' confusion. So that's always like a nice little candy that they throw into episodes once in a while when they do something different, you know? Wonderful. I think it's the best thing ever. It's like they had their time to go off and do other things. And it's like at the end of the day, these roles are so establishing for us all who have been cast members on this show, you know? So for them to pick up these two characters that people fell so madly in love with. I mean, even I was shipping Tiva. Come on. You know, I think it's a wonderful idea and I'm so excited to watch it. I'm excited for the audience to see it. It's like a blast from the past in the best of ways, you know? So yeah, it's interesting because the show's been on for so long, both of our shows, that the people that are fans at the age of 15, think about it. When they were 15, when NCIS started, that's 21, add 21 years to that. You know, people grow, they evolve, you change, you know, and so you sort of move on from stuff. So to be able to grab something from those fans past, the things they were shipping at the time and sort of bring it back, it's just lovely. It's nostalgic, you know? I don't know that I could see one in the near future. I think Eric's really busy doing what he's doing and loving that. I'm really busy doing what I'm doing and loving this. So I would never say never, but I think in the near future, probably that's not what's on the table for now. You know, I think it's important for us to go and find ourselves in other things because the show was really something important and special to us, but it's like leaving the nest, you know? It's like leaving your parents' house to go to college, and you really have to have that experience for a while of independence away from this thing that you felt so safe in. And you just need to venture out and find out who you are outside of that safe space. And then you'll see what happens after that. And I think that's, you know, I can't speak for Eric, but for me, this is how I interpret the situation. Funnily enough, I have thought about that, and because it takes me back to when I had just had kids, you know, and when my kids were young. So I've actually done the calculations. I was like, okay, if at around April or May last year, Kenzie says, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. Let's say that she was 3 months along at that point. So when would the baby have been born, and how many months old would the baby be now? And if that's the case, like what phase of motherhood is she in now? Is she still working, you know? So yeah, I definitely think about that. But at the same time, I'm almost happy that we didn't show all that on the show because you know, inherently in the first few months of a baby's life, even if a mom does eventually go back to work, she's obviously focused on the baby as much as she can. And I don't know how that would have translated onto the screen of like, just, do we now have a storyline whereas Kenzie like literally fighting with a baby in her arms? Because I wouldn't put it past her. Or is she out of the game for the first whatever months or weeks until, you know, Mama Deeks can come in and watch the baby and she can go back to work. But yeah, I do think about it. Listen, I love Kenzie like she's a separate person from me, you know, and I respect her and I love her and I always wanted to do right by her. And you know, I obviously cried with her. I am her, I'm not her. It's this thing when you're another person for so long, as similar as we are with sort of personality traits, we're also very different people with very different life experiences. And so I just cherish her. So I'm very careful just very careful and attentive to her still, I think. In fact, I didn't even do this on purpose before this interview, but I do have to say, if anybody watched the show for a long time, you'll know that I'm literally wearing all of Kenzie's things right now. I'm wearing her boots, her jeans, and her sweater. I just thought of it now that you're talking to me about it. Yeah, I spent the whole day with my kids dressed as Kenzie. Yeah, and actually, I mean, I think I can relate Knight, Kenzie, and Ziva. I mean, we were all in our own ways kind of guarded a little bit, at least when you first meet us. It takes us a second, you know. I think the reason why they become good at what they're doing for them is that they have had a reason to become guarded, which means they're always alert and they're always a little bit defensive about stuff, and so they can deal with the bad guys because they're ready for it at all times, right? You know, they've all had some sort of yeah, they're all kind of guarded, and they all take a second to crack open. They're all tough. They're all physical fighters. They're all fit and healthy. They all have a sense of humor. They're all sarcastic. They're all, you know, they're also the ones that just sort of like, just keep moving forward, stick to the case. Let's do what we have to do. And I think that's how these characters sort of start off when you first meet them for the first few years. And then each one of us will bring our own personalities to it, and you veer off into whatever you end up being by the end of your run. But yeah, I definitely see a lot in common between us three women, and they're actually traits that I love very much. I love this. This was the most, I have no intention of giving up acting. I love being in front of the camera. I will be the eternal show off. But at the same time, this parallel career that I've been, you know, blessed to have an opportunity to explore is just fascinating. And it's made me a better actor. It's made me a more considerate actor. I mean, I don't think I was selfish before, but now that I truly understand the ins and outs of everybody else's jobs that happen before the actors even get to set, the prep that goes into it, the location scouting, the wardrobe, the props. So for me, even though I've been in this business since I was, 16, right? So that's 24 years that I have actively been working on sets as a professional actor, and it still impresses me. It still impresses me to know how things are done. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been to Universal or MGM Studios when you're a kid, or Disneyland, and you've got the stunt show and they're jumping off of buildings onto mattresses, or you have this guy wobbling a metal sheet to make the thunder sound, you know. It's like, I still feel like that kid who went to those places for the first time. I'm like, that's how they do it. So yeah, I'm just a kid literally living in a dream right now. I wouldn't mind bringing Kenzie back at all. I think primarily for me, because this is the first time that I've directed on each show, it's important for me to just sort of get to know what the dynamic is on each show, get to know the crew, get to know the DP who I work very closely with, you know. And I think that if I had to shift half of my brain into playing a part and memorizing lines and being on in front of the camera, I feel like at least the first time I do it on a new show, I wouldn't be able to give my all as a director. And directing, I think because it's still relatively new for me, it still takes up pretty much all of my bandwidth. Because it's such a multitasking job, and you have to make sure that you have the whole episode arc in your head, not just story-wise, but just the cohesiveness of what one scene looks like to another, right? The transitions and everything, and being able to give the actors my full attention. So I can definitely do both. I did it on my show multiple times. But for me, the first time I go somewhere, I'd rather it be just the one job so I can really take it all in that way. But I am not opposed at all to showing up as Kenzie in either one of the NCIS shows. Sydney, just somebody at CBS is listening. I don't know, Sydney sounds like a great place to visit, just saying. It was so familiar. It's so familiar. I mean, it's like we never left each other's side. In his words, we're each other's homies. I told him, I was like, that's not even a word I use in my vernacular, but I'll take it. Yeah, it's so easy, and it's so familiar, and it's so like, there's nothing he can say or I can say that's gonna offend the other person that we haven't, you know what I mean? Like, we've literally celebrated together, we've been sad together, we've lost, crew members and cast members together, and he was there when I said Dave proposed, and he was there when I said I'm pregnant. He's so incredibly special to me. And yeah, when I'm directing him, I'm just like, hey, remember that thing whenever we did it, that this and that on our show? And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, let's do that again. And okay, I know what you're looking for. You know what I mean? So we just have a common language that we don't really need to over-explain anything to each other. And he was so supportive from day one about the directing. Like, Todd is someone who really respects a go-getter, and he's somebody who really respects somebody who tries to achieve more and higher, because he's that guy. And he recognizes that in other people, and he appreciates that in other people. So he's really, really, really encouraging when people say, I have a dream to do this, also do this other thing. He's like, do it, you should go for it. So, we'll do a take, and he'll be like, what else do you want to do? Do you have any notes? So he's wonderful. I absolutely adore him. I was very, very happy. I can tell you that it was written by all three showrunners, so they really dove deep into some of these characters, and it goes a little dark even. In fact, I think it's the darkest episode they've ever had, as far as I understand. The crime that's committed and what we find out over the course of the episode is, it's not a pleasant story, but it's an important one.